Well, hello, Ivy podcast listeners. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. I am your host, Angela Alberti. If you've had a chance to tune into many of the episodes that I've had the privilege to interview people across the globe for, then you know we are all about the human capital workforce ecosystem. And that's exactly what is going to be discussed in today's episode. I have the privilege to sit down and have a few words with Kaleen. Kaleen, can you give the audience a little bit of a background on yourself?
Sure. Well, as you mentioned, my name is Kaleen Robinson, and I'm the Chief Talent Officer at Salo. I'm really excited to be part of this podcast today.
Kaleen, thank you for joining us. We're going to dive into many different topics that we had the chance to just chat about even before we press record on today's session. But I'd love for the audience to get an idea of your background and your career timeline. Can you hop in and give us a dive into what that's been like for you?
Sure, Angela. You're asking me to go back quite a bit here. I've had really an amazing and exciting opportunity across my career. Started in HR back when it was more known as the personnel department.
Yeah.
And so I have been able to see it grow and evolve to become a much more strategic partner with the business. I have 35 years prior to coming to Salo, where I worked in the outsourcing industry and in the benefits consulting space, and had an opportunity to really test my skills in talent acquisition, talent development, compensation, total rewards. I mean, so I've been across the broad spectrum of HR, and now at Salo have really come into working mainly with talent, because that's what this is all about now, especially in today's world.
That's fantastic. And, I know that you've had a chance to see quite a few, different involvements with the industry as a whole, which we definitely want to hop into at some point, but love to just get your thoughts on the now, right? We know how quickly the talent delivery model is changing in the world around us, and how much that must have compared to that time 30 years ago when you guys were looking to stand up programs and build solid talent profiles. But give us your thoughts on what the pandemic has done to the way that talent delivery is being reconsidered.
Angela, you're asking me a question that is probably near and dear to my heart among anything else.
Right.
Because when you think about what's happening in the market today, some of it was driven by the pandemic from a speed standpoint, but I think the marketplace was already starting to see a shifting dynamic from talent. In other words, our talent wanted something different. They already were asking questions. We were seeing hybrid solutions be requested. We were seeing people say, I want to be able to go somewhere else and work from there. Can I still do that? And there were a lot of companies that were saying no, and we're having to lose talent. So I think what happened with the pandemic is it pushed the speed up much faster, and really forced companies to think differently about how they worked and interacted and connected with their talent. And so that's what I think we're seeing the outcome of today.
Yeah, it really is somewhat a renaissance, if you will, of talent and what they are looking to have and be fulfilled on. And you guys have had a wonderful success rate at Salo on this people first workplace. And I think it really lends itself to some of the things that you are mentioning and looking to embody in the marketplace as a whole. But can you dive into that sort of outlook that your team has had in terms of the people first workplace approach?
Yeah, Angela, that's a really good question to think through, because it's different for every company, right? And when I talked about what was changing in the market, while location and hybrid and the model, while that's one aspect of it, I think the other thing we're seeing is that individuals are wanting more control over their work, the work they do, who they do the work with, how often they do that work. And when you think about things like that, you have to be centered in a people first environment.
Right.
There are a lot of companies out there that I think say that they're people first, but not necessarily operate that way. And one of
Mhm.
the things that we've really tried to do at Salo is live it instead of talk about it. And
Mhm.
so you won't hear us talking a lot about it in meetings, but you will see us living it out by the decisions we make, by how we engage with people, by how we connect with people. And I think that people first mindset, once you have the purpose established, like how you're really, what's really important, when people can resonate and circle around a purpose, they get it. It becomes real for them and you can help
Mhm.
it be lived out.
Can you draw from a few of those examples in which you think that your team has done it, that you all have lived it? It's not this talk, right? It's something that you guys are actually looking to embody, and how that's been successful.
Yeah, I think some of that, Angela, is really based on an individual situation, like
Okay.
managers understanding, or our, when we work with our consultants, understanding what makes sense for them, understanding where they want to be and what's driving their decisions to consult, or
Mhm.
our internal employees really understanding where they're coming from. And so the way I've seen that play out is by managers stepping up and having a really transparent conversation with people and saying, here's what I'm noticing. Help me understand what makes the most sense for you or where that's coming from. And
Mhm.
then we can figure out a solution. And I
Mhm.
can give you a real quick example of something that happened to me, even when I was going through the interview process. It was really interesting because the individual I was interviewing with recognized that this was such a big decision for me to make that she offered to meet with my partner at the time because she
Wow.
knew it impacted our family. And
Wow.
so the fact that she was open to meeting with family members to help them wrap their head around what this might mean for them, that's a people first environment. That's
Wow.
where you think about the person and the impact that the company is having on the person and the person is having on the company.
Yeah, and it's truly rooted into the individual, right? It's not this all-encompassing policy, one size fits all. It's what size fits you as an individual contributor to this organization. So that's absolutely fantastic, and truly a great approach. Something that I selfishly, I think I'm going to walk away from and learn as a hopeful leader in a larger organization. Now, I think it's wonderful how Silo has grown, and you guys have, these consultants in hundreds of areas. Can you give us a little bit of a breakdown on what it is that you guys do in general, to those that may not be familiar?
Sure, I'd be happy to do a little advertisement for
There
Salo.
you go.
Salo is an organization that provides finance, accounting, and HR support, consulting support for clients. And
Mhm.
we do it mainly at the more senior level. So
Okay.
whether it's CFOs, CHROs, VPs, directors, but our clients come to us when they have gaps in their own talent. And today there are a lot of them, right?
Right.
Because people are experiencing the impact of what's going on and the choices that people are making. And so our clients come to us and they say, I have a maternity leave that's going on and I need a controller to help fill in the gaps. And they will tell us a lot about what they're looking for. And then we will try to match somebody to what they're looking for. But again, it's a process, it's an iterative process. We don't just say, oh, okay, we have a controller here, we'll put them there. It has to be the right match. And
Mhm.
that's, I think, what's so important about Salo is that it matters to us the matches that are made and how we make those connections.
And one of the things that I thought was super interesting is the way that you guys are treating your consultants, and the fact that they are all employees, and you hear about, as anyone within the HR or workforce ecosystem can tell you, the usage or the misusage of independent contractors, and the labeling of independent contractors. And that does not seem to be the case. It really is like a unified approach that you guys are looking to take with your consultants. Can you shed a little bit more light on perhaps the positive impact? Of course, in some cases in boardrooms, they look at the cost impact and they go with that. But obviously treating an entire workforce as employees, even though they could be considered an SME at an IC level, what has that positive impact brought about through Salo and their own consultant workforce?
That's a great question, Angela. And I think where I see it play out the most is the questions always start with, what's the impact to the consultant?
Hmm.
So instead of our leadership team saying, what's the bottom line? We
Hmm.
want to know the impact of any of the decisions that we make. And so, for example, our consultants are W-2'd with us. They are part of our Salo group. I think many of them feel part of the Salo family, so to speak. The other thing that's, I think, impressive around our consultants is that we have consultants who have worked with us for years. Probably one of the best problems that I've had to solve is we have consultants who are approaching their 20th anniversary with us, consulting with us for 20 years. And someone in HR came to me and said, we don't have an anniversary gift for 20 years yet on the consultant side. We need to think about that. And so even just hearing that we have consultants who have consulted with us for a long time like that,
Wow.
that says something, I think, about the environment we create, the connection we create to the consultant, and also the types of client experiences that they're able to have.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So one of the things that you were touching on a little bit earlier is some of the different approaches that your team does to truly understand what the needs are, the client and the needs of the consultant individual to make it a successful match. But let's go back to what the client's needs are. What are some of those analytical approaches that you guys take when it comes to the client? Because each client, let's face it, has their own understanding and their own definition of what's going to be a successful hire. How do you guys get surgical and understanding and probing on those questions that would define what is important to them?
I don't think it's any one thing, Angela. I think it's probably a multitude of things that we look at. For example, when our internal, we call them business development directors, work
Hmm.
with the clients,
Hmm.
they often get to know the client.
Hmm.
So we have a lot of repeat clients that come back, and we know the culture through over the time that we're working with them. But if
Hmm.
it's a brand new client, we're going to spend a lot of time upfront with the client to understand, what's your culture like, what types of not only skills are successful, but what are the types of things that a person needs to bring to the culture that will allow them to be successful here. Whether it's ability to work independently, whether it's ability to work as part of a big team and be able to share information back and forth, those are all critical pieces of what we have to do when we work with our clients. And we have to find out, we have a series of questions that we will ask, but a lot of it is in that conversation between the business development director and the client to really understand, what's the most important thing to you, client, that
Hmm.
you want to see fulfilled in this person. And then we'll go back and look at the consultants from a skill set. But we have to match that culture, that environment, that, the pace, all of those things are critical things to us from a client standpoint.
Okay. And I just thought through this and you being the chief talent officer at a growing organization that is really involved into this world and this demand for talent supply. I'm sure that you've seen it, and I hate to utilize the repeated phrase here, but DE and I. And I think it's so critical for us to talk about not just DE and I at the surface level from what we see on LinkedIn or when we're reading about it in Shroom or what have you, but really to talk about the role that an organization like you, the intermediary, plays when it comes to a company's DE and I initiatives. Have you guys really changed some of the approach that you guys take with the client, if that's a priority of theirs, in understanding what they're looking to represent as part of their workforce makeup?
I'm glad you asked that question, because yes, it is very important to us, not just from what we say, but how we behave in that
Mhm.
in that approach. And so we do think, obviously, there are plenty of things we're doing internally to really focus and expand, because it is a journey. We are not there yet. We will never be there. It's something you continually work at. You learn new things all the time. But when we work with clients, that's one of the elements that we need to talk through. And we will often push them on a direction or a thought about having them be a little bit more open-minded about what we're trying to do. And that, do you want the person that looks best on paper, or do you want the person that really has the skills and the capabilities to step into your organization and drive what you need done? And so
Right.
oftentimes we're having to push them to think differently. We want, obviously, a slate of diverse candidates in any kind of opportunity that we have. So that's really important. But DE&I is not just about diverse candidates, it's broad.
Right.
And
Right.
so we have to think about it from all of those angles.
Yeah, because if you truly think about diverse, it's almost a matter of an implication. We're all diverse. So
Right.
what does diverse mean to defining it at that organization, and how you approach it whenever you do present a candidate? That's wonderful. Kaleen, thank you for that overview. Now, speaking of diverse or even search practices that can hone in on a client's needs or what they would consider to be important, have you guys implemented any form of technological advances to really help check the boxes and help in sourcing, identifying, building rapport? Let's talk about those innovations and technology that are taking place in the recruiting and staffing world that has helped your team.
Yeah, Angela, it's interesting because I think AI, and if you think about how AI started
Right.
and the journey we've been on with AI, you hear all about the technology transformation, right? That's really important. But what we're learning is that the technology transformation can't happen if it replaces the human connection. And so what we're trying to do at Salo is bring both of those together. I mean, if there are opportunities for us, and we're finding opportunities where we can use artificial intelligence, we can use chatbots, we can use things like that to help source or help bring in talent, but we cannot replace that human connection alone. We
Yeah.
have to make sure we have that connection with people. So it allows us to do more on the human connection side if we have it positioned right, if we have those technology foundations in place to bring us the talent, then we can take the talent and really connect with the individual.
Yeah. And I think that's super critical because as fancy as technology gets, you need somebody there holding hands and building rapport. And I'm a proponent of that approach, without a shadow of a doubt. And you guys, at Silo have had the opportunity to leverage some of that. But I'd love to get your thoughts on the contingent workforce in general. You guys have a team of contingent workers that are, consulting at your client's location. What do you think about it, maybe from a historical context on what it's grown into, and where do you think it's going?
Well, we talked about this a little bit earlier,
Mhm.
where I think the pandemic has fed into the speed of change that we're.
Right.
But I think what we're also seeing is we're seeing people make different choices. They don't necessarily want to be in corporate America anymore. I was just on a call this morning with our consultants, and one of the consultants said the reason why she made the change was because she had gotten to the point where she was in a controller role, and literally she just thought, I can't keep up. I can't do this anymore. And she wanted to be able to leave her workplace and go home and spend time with her family members
Right.
and be
Right.
able to take time off, like PTO, and not work. What would that be like? We all know what that's like. And
Yeah.
so I think when she made that choice, I think many others are making similar decisions like that. And so when we think about the contingent workforce, it has evolved. There are more and more people wanting to get into consulting. They're afraid, some of them, because that's a big shift. What happens? Do I get benefits? What, am I
Mhm.
really part of an environment? Am I part of a grouping? Do I have a connection to something or someone? And so
Mhm.
we're trying to create at Salo, we're trying to create that connection for our consultants so that they do feel like they are connected to an organization, Salo, but they are able to work on behalf of Salo with the clients then.
Mhm. And have you guys implemented any part of your benefits program or approach that you feel has lended itself to a more competitive advantage and proper talent curation strategies when it comes to building a talent pool of consultants around you?
That's a really good question. And I think we are doing some things. Obviously, we do offer benefits to our consultants.
Hmm.
I think we're always trying to listen to our consultants about what gaps might be there. It's not
Hmm.
just all,
Oh my
oh,
gosh, yeah.
everything, but we're asking our consultants what's missing for you. Every time a consultant ends an opportunity or what we call a meaningful experience, every time they end a meaningful experience, they actually provide a survey response to us. And in that survey response, we actually will ask, what could we be doing differently? And so we're hearing things about, well, maybe if you did this, or maybe if you offered this, that would be helpful. And so those are things that we then take back to the drawing board to really look at and say, what's the ROI on this? What makes sense? Is this a trend that we're seeing in the marketplace? Do we need to really shift in how we think about something? And how do we do that in the best way for our consultants?
Absolutely. And it has to be an ever evolving piece, right? We were just talking about, before we started the show about the generational impact and how the millennial and Gen Zs don't necessarily care about things like health insurance as much as they used to. So it is a very shifting workforce. Now, this question may be a little bit selfish in my own retrospect. I'd love to just absorb some of your advice to maybe that young female, professional that's looking to grow within their career, and also try to balance everything that they have going on. You mentioned that you have a family earlier. Any advice, aside from the fact that no one knows it all and there's not a perfect answer to it, but what has helped you in your very robust career grow into that professional, but try to balance it as well with what you have happening at a personal level, being a female, because it is different in some cases. Any advice that you have?
Yeah, I'm sort of chuckling because I sure haven't figured it all out yet. I wish I did. But some of the things that I have learned along the way is count on your team, lean on your team. I think one thing that I've tried to live throughout my career is being transparent when things
Mhm.
are good, but also when I'm struggling. I have created some very strong, trusting relationships with either coworkers or managers along the way, and being able to say, "Hey, I'm struggling right now because of X," has allowed me to, first of all, it takes some of the pressure off
Right.
from me feeling like I have to do it all, and
Mhm.
then I'm able to problem solve with the people around me to get to a better solution. Balance, you're going to always feel like you have to work more. No one's going to tell you to put your computer on away and step away. You have to do that yourself. And so the piece of advice I would give is make sure that you stay true to yourself and that you work really hard to ensure you make some of the boundaries for yourself, because otherwise no one's going to do that for you.
That's very true. And some of the advice that I can look to step away from myself as we're all trying to figure this out, right? Kaylin, this may be a little bit of a loaded question, if you will, but 5 years from now, what do you think the future of work is going to look like? As a makeup of perhaps what's happening at a global level, but within this country specifically, what does the future of work mean to you?
I get really excited when I hear that question because I think there's almost no limit to what the future of what could look like
Right.
if we take advantage of what's there right now.
Hmm.
So if we learn to flex and to adapt to what our talent is telling us, and if we can create that blend of meeting the business need, but also meeting the needs of our talent at the same time, there's no limit. But I expect that in 5 years, people will be able to work from anywhere.
Hmm.
Right now, there's lots of different state laws that get in the way sometimes, but we can work through all those things. But I see us being able to work from anywhere, that we, national organizations or global organizations have expanded. Uh, I see people being able to choose how they want to work. I see benefits being broader, and probably not necessarily just the traditional benefits, but people being able to pick and choose what makes sense for them based on where they are. So I think if we can continue to listen to what our talent is saying and learn from what they're telling us, we can really bring this very far in the future.
That's absolutely true. And it really is at the core of so much of your messaging on today's episode. And that is truly at the individual, and understanding what their needs are, and how to look to create a structure around that, because the signs are just indicative of the worker is at the driver's seat and in control. Now, I'd love to just get an idea of what your content diet consists of. What are some of the things that you read up on, or that you, maybe a book, a newsletter? What are you staying on top of just to absorb more information?
Yeah, so there are a lot of things. I mean, you get in any role, when you're in a role at an organization, you get an onslaught of information. So I like to stay up on a lot of the trends around talent, what we're hearing in the marketplace. I'm really interested in what engagement means to different organizations, how they're approaching it. I'm also very interested in hearing about people that are doing unique things or really driving their DE&I work in their organizations, and how it's successful, and trying to learn from that. Obviously, there are a number of forums that I'm involved in, and I try to participate in those as well. You try to squeeze in as much as you can to do that, but those are some of the things that I really focus on from a topical standpoint.
Oh, that's wonderful. So any, closing words as we're wrapping up, although I feel like I can sit here and just gab with you a lot, because you do provide a plethora of information and resources. But where can we find you, and get in touch with you?
Sure, I'm on LinkedIn, Kaleen Robinson. I'm sure my name will be out there when you post this. You can reach me at Kaleen Robinson at hellosalo.com. So that's another place to reach me as well. And I would love to hear from people, and I'd love to hear ideas and exchange thoughts and suggestions around how we can be doing things better at Salo, but also how we can help you as an individual, or if you're interested in getting into consulting, or as a client.
Awesome. Kaleen, thank you so much for your time today. I always think that time is one of the more valuable things that we can give one another in this very busy world that we're in. So we appreciate you spending some time with us.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. We'll see everyone on the next episode of the Ivy Podcast.